Welcome to Party Like a Marketer, the podcast dedicated to cannabis marketing, public relations, and authentic storytelling. I'm your host, Lisa Buffo, the founder and CEO of Cannabis Marketing Association. You can connect with me on Instagram at LeeBuff and Twitter at LeeBuff21. I'm also on LinkedIn, and you can find our podcast on Instagram at Party Like a Marketer. Send me a message. I'd love to hear from you. Today's episode is brought to you by Alter Strategies. Custom Instagram filters are a fun way to get lots of organic reach and work great with Reels. Get a unique Instagram filter for your brand from Alter Strategies. Don't need one yourself? Alter offers commissions on referrals if you know any brands that do. Call Wes at 866-473-6668. Today's conversation features Matt Shate, the Vice President of Operations at Surfside. Matt spent the last decade in and around ad tech, 8 of those at Live Intent, a DSP, SSP, and identity tech company. About a year at Ad Marketplace, a search advertising exchange, and he's now at Surfside. Matt is passionate about building for scale and setting people up for success. He currently oversees Surfside's customer success, account strategy, and ad ops teams, and has also in the past managed business intelligence, project management, and campaign management functions as well. In his spare time, he has been working on his golf game. He is a huge Boston sports fan and loves cooking and going out to eat. Matt is also a big traveler as well. He has lived in NYC since 2009 and is a current and proud resident of Brooklyn. Matt, thank you so much for joining us today. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, what you do at Surfside, how you got started in cannabis, and we'll start there.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be here. So I've been in kind of like the ad tech space now for around a decade. I spent 8 years at Live Intent, which is like a DSP and SSP based in email. So like a lot of identity, a lot of CRM, first party stuff, and pretty much been in operations the entire time. So I've overseen like ad operations teams, campaign management teams, business intelligence, anything to try and make the generation of revenue as seamless as possible. And then I got connected with John and Michael at Surfside around 4 or 5 months ago. So I'm relatively new to cannabis marketing specifically. But yeah, doing operations here as well, and overseeing our ad ops team, account strategy, and customer success. So it's been a great experience so far, diving deep into the world of cannabis, which definitely new to me, but I feel like not entirely foreign relative to the digital marketing that I've been doing to date. So yeah, it's been a great ride so far.
And where are you from? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Boston, so I'm a big Boston sports fan still, but I've been in New York since 2009. I went to NYU and then kind of like jumped into the startup space from there. So yeah, still kind of Boston roots, I guess, but definitely a New Yorker officially now because it's been over a decade. So that's, I think, the barometer, I guess.
Definitely, yeah. And did you study advertising or marketing at NYU?
So I majored in finance and international business, actually. So not quite, but I feel like, we took a bunch of classes, and then it was definitely trial by fire at Live Intent, and like starting off and going really deep and understanding exactly what like D2C marketers are doing and the different strategies that they have. Working with a lot of different brands as well. So it was like a nice full funnel approach where we were doing everything from like brand awareness and education down to driving purchases, return on ad spend, and like how do we maximize lifetime value and all the fun marketing metrics and such. So I'd say more of like street smarts of marketing as opposed to any formal kind of major in college or education.
Yeah, totally understand. And same here. I studied psychology and English undergrad, and marketing has changed a lot in the last 10 years.
Definitely.
With the emergence of social media, programmatic has changed. I mean, the landscape has definitely changed. So Can you speak a little bit to what Surfside does and how they help cannabis marketers, and to programmatic a bit more broadly? I know in the industry, I speak with a lot of folks about it, and it seems like folks either get it or they sort of understand it, but they don't quite get, the application and how to implement it. So can you just speak a little bit to the discipline itself, but also what Surfside is doing and how they help cannabis companies?
Yeah, definitely. I think really like our mission is sort of to simplify and unify the marketing stack and make it as easy as possible for cannabis marketers to get a good understanding of both prospective, current, former customers, and then reach them with the right messages. And certainly, I think you want to reach all of those different personas with specific messaging that actually resonates. So what we've done is build like a technology stack and platform that has a lot of native integrations with different point of sale providers and like e-commerce providers, CRM, to really help our customers understand, again, their prospective and current consumers, and then reach them with those messages. So we're and then on top of that, analyze what actually worked and what didn't, and should we lean in a little bit more? Should we be targeting our best customers with specific ads? Should we be reaching prospects with net new deals to try and acquire new customers? So I'd say, like, in ad tech jargon, we are a like customer data platform and a DSP rolled into one. So really
Can you
helping
explain what a DSP is for our audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So demand side platform. So basically we have connections into both supply platforms and publishers directly across the web. And so we allow our advertisers basically to access different types of supply and inventory all across the web, both on like websites that, CNN, New York Times, et cetera, of the world, also in apps and across different sorts of media types as well. So like the kind of standard traditional digital ad, the 300 by 250 banner is like the jumping off point. But certainly, today there's a huge focus and emphasis on video, both online and like, a YouTube or connected TV with partners like a Roku or Hulu, et cetera. So really it's almost like the gateway to buying on the web, and a mechanism to help us reach relevant audiences wherever they're spending time across the internet.
And so you said you will target retarget current customers and also, seek new leads or prospects. Walk me through that process, like, and particularly so let's talk about both of those. One, when you're targeting current customers, like, are you pulling from those brands like databases and their lists, and what is that process you go through with them to say, okay, these are your current customers, here's what we know that either works, or here's what we don't know, and how do you approach that? And then also, when you're targeting leads or new prospects, where do you get that information?
Yeah, I think the brand's most valuable asset in general is going to be their first party data. So like their CRM file, and with, Surfside's integrations, we can pull that data in, analyze it, and understand, okay, like, who are the customers that are doing the most repeat purchases, or have bought the most in the last 30, 60, 90 days, or frankly bought one time and then never came back. Turn those data points into audiences and then activate against the web. So, I do think in general, like it's super, super important to leverage that first party data, because it's the old saying, it's so much cheaper to retain existing customers than it is to acquire a net new customer. And there's just so many ways to reach people today, whether that's through email, through text message, through display banners, like I was mentioning before, video, etc. So, Surfside specifically, we're definitely helping these brands and multi-state operators, single state operators, etc. Really get the most out of the data that they've worked so hard to acquire, organically or through paid means. So yeah, that's definitely a huge key, I think, to any kind of cannabis brand's marketing strategy has to be leveraging their first party data as effectively as possible.
And how do you, well, and then for new customers, how do you
Mhm.
find them? Like, how does that process differentiate if there's no first party data there?
Yeah, so I think there's a bunch of different ways that we can do it, and it will sort of depend on the specific use case. A favorite of mine and what I've seen success both in cannabis and outside of cannabis is using like lookalike modeling. And so what we'll do there is, because we've got the integrations with the CRM, so we have their first party data. They'll say, hey, here are the 5,000 or 250,000 highest value customers that I have in my database. And then we can run that through a lookalike model and reach people with similar attributes that are not in said database. So it's a good way to prospect, and you kind of base it off of what you already know, which are, okay, here are my high value customers, but then I'm going to try and reach net new people as that have like similar sort of, whether it's ages, whether it is other demographic data, whether they've made a purchase in the past, et cetera. There's a lot of different attributes that we'll basically access.
And this is similar for our audience. So like, this is similar if you've run an ad on LinkedIn or Facebook,
Mhm.
which we can't do in cannabis mostly now.
Yeah.
But if you can run a LinkedIn ad and say, hey, I'm targeting, if you're B2B folks 25 plus who are marketing professionals in Colorado, within your followers. And then once you target them directly, so we'll call that first party data, like these folks already follow us, LinkedIn can help scan their whole database and find that
Mhm.
lookalike audience. So you're basically saying it's the same thing, but using more aggregate customer, bigger databases.
Yeah, exactly. And so like everything is at scale and anonymized. So it's not like we're going and looking at any individual, like, oh, this, Matt is like John. It's more at an aggregate level across tens of thousands of consumers, and then mapping it back to success, I think is the biggest key. So understanding, like, have these people made a purchase, and what are the attributes that they possess that look like other people. So yeah, it's a very similar process. I think it's something that, as you mentioned, the Facebooks, Googles, LinkedIn's of the world definitely offer kind of natively in their platforms as well. And yeah, I've seen it be a super powerful tool, both in cannabis. We're running lookalikes across most of our campaigns today. But then previously working with, direct to consumer brands like a Bomba Socks, we would do the same sort of strategy, and it really helps find net new users who are going to match kind of that overall profile of your current and best customers.
And are there any trends or attributes you've seen that have sort of stuck out, or like you've noted as far as like, oh, I didn't think, this was going to work, or this customer base would be interested, but like, can you speak to any trends you've seen or any data that's maybe surprised you or is noteworthy from all the campaigns that you've run?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's lots of interesting trends that we've seen in terms of like individual people. Like, we're very cognizant of PII and data security, so we're not really looking and seeing like, oh, these 10 people do XYZ. It's all anonymized and kind of almost like locked away in a machine learning algorithm. So which makes it very like privacy friendly and safe, because again, we're not analyzing like any individual people and what they're doing. But yeah, I think in general, we've seen a pretty broad set of profiles of people that are engaging and interested in cannabis across kind of age ranges, household incomes, and genders as well. So it's we've actually seen a lot of success across different profiles, relative to what you might expect historically, in the space.
Nice. And you had talked about measuring success. I want to get into
Mhm.
that a little bit. So, how do you measure success on these campaigns? How do you go from saying, okay, this attribution, right? How do you say, like, this ad is what made Lisa, walk in the door and purchase, this brand of edibles? How do you kind of measure success, and what are some of the ways in which you look at it?
Yeah, we are definitely very success action oriented. I think, uh, in general, especially nowadays, like, there's a ton of value in brand awareness and education, and kind of building up that brand equity. But given macroeconomic trends, like, I think results are super important as well. So we look very closely at, are we driving people into stores, like, physically, and are we driving online sales and online purchases? And so we use our kind of Surfside, we call it our Surfside experience graph, and we have our kind of closed loop attribution system that allows us to understand, okay, you were exposed to this ad, then you clicked on it, then you physically went into a store, and made a purchase, or then online you went and you checked out, you went through the checkout process and you bought, some edibles or a vape or flour, etc. So, um, it's something that we are doing literally daily, and our kind of optimizations and ad ops team is looking into, because we do know how precious, our customers marketing dollars are, um, and we want to make sure we're leveraging them as effectively as possible. So I think it goes back to starting with the full funnel approach and understanding, okay, like, if we do want to do a top of funnel campaign, that's great. Like, let's do some video ads, let's do some connected TV stuff where you're not going to, generally, like, if you're watching on whatever Roku on your TV, you're not going to click into anything and immediately make a purchase, but it can be super helpful from an educational standpoint. Um, and then what we want to do is kind of push people down the funnel and continue to show them relevant ads. And okay, great. Now maybe they've been exposed to a video. So whether it's the next day, next hour, next month, show them other ads that they can engage with, and actually make those specific purchases again, whether online or if we want to drive people directly into a store to complete a transaction. And then from an attribution standpoint, because we have integrations with, some of the point of sale providers, and as well as, like, the kind of digital e-com, providers, website building softwares as well, we're able to understand, again, in, like, that anonymized, very privacy friendly, no PII analysis kind of way, who has actually been exposed and or clicked on an ad and then completed the actual transaction.
That makes sense. And when you, I want to also talk about costs a little bit, because I think
Mhm.
some folks either don't understand it or think it may be out of reach. Like, how do you approach, how do you charge for this? Like, how do you approach cost, and, like, what can marketers, expect to spend until they see results?
Yeah, so we charge on, like, the right now the traditional CPM model, so it costs per 1,000 impressions. I think we're definitely exploring other sorts of models, more like SaaS type, monthly fees on a go forward. Um, but I think the key here is really understanding the lifetime value of the customers that we're reaching together, or that are being driven into stores, or making purchases online, because, uh, it it really is all about that long term return. So, we'll generally have, like, a ramp up period, something like, 2 to 4 weeks, where we're understanding, like, what's working, what's not. Is there certain messaging we're serving, that it is or is not resonating, and then can we lean deeper into what's working and pull back on what's not. And then usually, I mean, we like to see a positive return after a month or two, and from there we can really start to build, because we understand the users that we're driving into the funnel, and then we can kind of keep pushing them down deeper with the messages that do resonate. So really incentivizing them to not just make a first purchase, where maybe you offer something like, oh, 15% off for new customers, but then use that information to continue to incentivize repeat purchases as well down the road. So, I think we like to see a positive return, as I was saying, relatively quickly.
Yeah.
And then I do think it's super important for brands to do a lot of analysis on their individual customers in their first party databases, because they can see, and we can help provide some of this data from our end too. How many ads are they actually being shown? When are they being shown an ad relative to when they're making a purchase? And then are they coming back, right? Are they making multiple purchases? And it's so kind of where I started. The first party data and being on top of it is super, super important to ensure that we are running profitable campaigns for our customers.
That makes sense. And so so it sounds like you're running A/B tests, in the sense where like you're running a few different ads and saying, okay, copy's a little bit different on this one. And then you're able to help those brands analyze the results and thin it out to what's working and double down on that.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's super important also to continue to, lights keep going off here.
Yeah.
Continue to test different creatives. There are generally some best practices that will work across the board. So you do want to have really strong calls to action, shop now, discounts for first time customers, whatever it may be. But then we definitely like to run a bunch of different creative concepts. Like I'll usually recommend like 3 to 5 different concepts, meaning different imagery, perhaps a different landing page, or a call to action. And
you guys help put those together.
Yeah, so we have what we call like our Surfside studio, and we have a bunch of in-house designers and a team that will put together all sorts of different formats of ads. So like I mentioned before, there's like the traditional kind of standard banners that we see have a ton of scale and do perform well across the web. But we've also seen, especially for dispensaries, the more interactive units work really well, like the technical terms like rich media, but things like a tap to map, where you can click in and actually see, here are the dispensaries in the areas around me, or here are the specific brands dispensaries, because I do think that awareness is super important as states continue to legalize recreationally or medicinally, because people just don't know where to even go right now and who to trust. So if you can get in front of consumers with, hey, here's this really nice looking ad that actually shows me with a map where I need to go, we've seen really good results with units like that.
That's interesting. And so you're working with brands and retailers in that sense?
Yes.
Okay. And do you have different strategies for them? Like, are there kind of best practices where like you were saying with maps, that's what made me think about it. Like for retailers, you want to physically, for example, direct people there. Like, are there different sort of approaches as far as what you're testing for a brand versus a retailer, or any best practices that distinguish them?
Yeah, I think in general, like what we'll want to do is take a step back and understand the customer and their positioning in the market, and what they're really trying to achieve. So for example, if somebody is not doing a ton of direct to consumer purchasing online, like through their website, will likely want to start and focus with, okay, let's drive people into your actual dispensaries in your stores. On the other hand, we're working with some brands that have a really strong online presence. And if that's the case, and they've got, a really nicely built out website and a really kind of seamless checkout and user experience, then we might want to focus more on sort of those online transactions and getting people to buy right there. So it will sort of depend on the customer, where they are in the market, like strategically, but also even where they are physically, right? Are they in
Yeah.
an urban area surrounded by tons of other stores, bars, restaurants, places where we can show ads? Or is it more rural where, okay, we need to figure out how do we find people that are going to make the journey, whatever it is, 45 minutes or an hour to a specific store. So, there's definitely no one size fits all approach. And I think the key is taking that step back and understanding, where are you as a brand, physically, digitally, et cetera, in order to kind of put together a program that's going to drive success and that's going to kind of allow us to build over time.
Did you know that custom Instagram filters are a fun way to get lots of organic reach and work great with Reels? Get a unique Instagram filter for your brand from Alter Strategies. Don't need one yourself? Alter offers commissions on referrals if you know any brands that do. Call Wes at 866-473-6668.
Yeah, and that's interesting you say that. I was gonna say, so I get asked a lot that one size fits all question where people ask me, what is, the best marketing channel you've seen? And I have a similar answer where I always say, let's take it a step back, right? Who are your customers? Where are they? Where are they consuming media? Do you have this information and your buyer personas? Yeah. And then are you targeting them accordingly? Like if your customers are, on this platform or these websites, but you're not targeting them there, there's going to be a mismatch. It's not necessarily, again, one size fits all, or there's like a silver bullet to it. So along that line, is there any advice you have for cannabis marketers when they're first getting started into programmatic that is something maybe you run into with them that you're like, I have to explain this to all the clients? Like, what's something you wish they knew a little bit earlier or you feel is a misconception that would make them more successful in these approaches using programmatic?
Yeah, great question. I think in general, it's being realistic about where you are. And then depending on where you are, like that's where you need to start, right? So if you do 0 online transactions today, if nobody is purchasing online and they're just going directly into your store, nobody's going to be able to take you from 0 to like 1 million overnight. So if that's the case, okay, let's figure out how do we get started. And how we get started is probably more of that top funnel awareness videos, get people to understand and interact with your brand, or even organic content too, right? Like I follow Houseplant on Instagram, and I think they do a great job of just like putting together really, really nice organic content that makes me want to engage with it. So I think it's all about having realistic expectations and then figuring out what strategies are best to start with. Like it's the order of operations kind of problem. So you do need to start and raise awareness before you're going to just have 1 million people check out on your website. And I do think programmatic can be a great option for this, because that's sort of the beauty of it, is you can execute on any strategy that you want. You just kind of have to know what it is that you want to execute on ahead of time. So I think it's really just about like, sitting down and thinking through realistically, where am I today? Where do I want to be in a year or two? I want to build a big online presence. Awesome. There's, tons of opportunities to do that, both through organic, like managing your own Instagram page, and through paid channels as well, where you can reach people on all sorts of connected TV, online video, or banner ads as well. I do think awareness and education is super important, especially for cannabis right now, just because there's so much opportunity, right? Like there's so much opportunity to become a brand that is like a name brand, the brand that people know about, that people are going to seek out. Because historically, it's been more, I think, about just buying up a product as opposed to saying like, I want to purchase from this brand, right? In the same way, I want to drink Casamigos tequila or whatever. Like there's a ton of opportunity to kind of build up that brand.
Yeah. So you're saying that programmatic has the opportunity to achieve multiple marketing goals, whether it's top of funnel, just getting folks in, bringing awareness to the table, whether it's bottom of funnel, increasing conversions, or like increasing that customer lifetime value and getting them to come back and be repeat customers. So the technology exists for that, but it is about when you approach working with a programmatic company like Surfside, that you're doing it with clear goals in mind, and then you create the strategy, the copy, the creative, all of that is going to allow you to test those specific.
Like the science exists. I think the key is the art to a certain extent, which is like, let's be realistic and let's just start somewhere that is going to make sense for you, and that then plugs into the tech that does exist. So I think, for example, we talk a lot about like KPIs. Again, in store, we want to drive people in store. We want to drive online conversions. Let's start with one, right? So what is most important to you today based on what presence that you do have? And there's no one size fits all approach, but like I said, if nobody's buying online and everybody's going in store, let's start there and let's understand what's working in terms of how do we continue to push people into your store, continue to drive repeat customers or net new customers into your store, while maybe you're doing some more organic stuff on your side of things to build up your online presence. So really, I think the only time that historically and cannabis and non-cannabis, I've seen brands struggle with programmatic or just digital in general is just when you bite off more than you can chew from the get-go, and you're just like, I'm going to spend $1 billion across all of these tactics, and then everything can kind of get muddied together. So I think it's all about setting realistic goals, and then working towards achieving them. And then once you hit that milestone, continuing on, and maybe it's further down the funnel, maybe it's a new product, whatever it may be. But I think it's really important to be very focused in terms of what you're trying to achieve, especially in a world where everybody has limited budgets and is trying to figure out what's the best way to deploy them. So the best way is always going to be choose one thing and let's do that really well, and then we can kind of build from there once we've gotten this one success locked in.
Yeah, that makes sense. And do you work with brands and retailers together or in partnership, where I know they can do that and they do in other channels, whether it's billboard advertising or social media, where they're working together and the brands are saying, we want you can purchase us at this store. Is there room for that in programmatic? Do you see that at all, or are you kind of just working with these businesses individually?
Yeah, we actually have like a formal called a Cannabis co-op program. So we do a lot, and we see this, and it's been, I think, a great strategy outside of cannabis as well, with like the Walmarts and Targets working with individual brands. But there's a huge opportunity there to help the brands and dispensaries partner together to not just drive people into your store, but then really highlight specific brands that you have a partnership with. So we definitely facilitate a lot of that over time with lots of different customers. Again, I think it's the success will sort of determine from the starting point. So is this a net new brand to a dispensary? Is it something that people are already buying a lot of? And then just making sure that we have the right messaging relative to what that positioning is. So yeah, I think the context of it is always super important, and it's something that we especially highlight, across our managed services team and offering, is like, we want to understand our customers and what's working and what's not, so that we can put together the right offerings, whether it's a co-op sort of situation or not. But yeah, we definitely see a lot of this sort of co-op partnership, and we've seen a lot of success with it in the past, especially again when messages are tailored. So like, okay, if this is a net new brand in the dispensary, we'll want to do like coordination, right, between a digital ad and then when I walk in, like kind of shove it in my face to a certain extent, like physically, right? Like if I saw this ad, come buy these amazing new edibles, I want to see them as soon as I walk in so I don't get distracted and then like go buy something else. So I think the more coordination and like the more holistic we can kind of be, the better performance we'll see overall.
And is there anything you've noticed? You said you're fairly new to cannabis, coming from your previous roles and ad tech, not in cannabis. Any like major differences that you've seen in this industry versus the work you were doing before? And if you don't mind, can you tell us a little bit about were there any specific industries or brands or types of companies that you worked with prior to joining cannabis, and like what any just similarities or differences?
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, it's mostly a lot of similarities, right? I think whether like I was at Live Intent and we worked with Bombas socks and Public Rec pants and Wayfair, and at the end of the day, they're trying to achieve the same goals. So there's not too much in terms of like major fundamental differences I've noticed. Certainly there's like a lot of nuances and all of the state regulations, what you can and can't show. And I think even looking at someone like a Juul, for example, where they got into a huge lawsuit for marketing to underage people. So there's definitely like lines that we want to be careful not to cross. But really, I think it's mostly just a great education opportunity for cannabis brands, because they can kind of look to what's working across all of these other spaces and try and replicate it, right? If you go onto Bombas's site, they're going to offer a lot of the same stuff that cannabis brands should offer: discounts for first time customers, sign up for this for an email list, and you'll get whatever deals in your inbox delivered daily. So I really see a lot of similarities overall, and I think it's super important to kind of study what's worked and what hasn't for a lot of these non-cannabis brands, because that's what's going to give you a leg up in the space. And I definitely think when you look at some of the alcohol brands, and you can kind of see what has worked really well for them. I think quality overall has had a huge like comeuppance just across all industries, right? I think people are looking for, I'd rather buy less of something at a higher quality than just like give me 6 gallons of gin, whatever. Like, no, I want to buy Ryan Reynolds Aviator gin, whatever it is. So I do think, there's a ton of opportunity to align around quality and like trusted brand, because then people will feel comfortable going into your store or purchasing from your brand online, especially when I think overall cannabis marketing, it's still really in its infancy of what it can be over the next 3 to 5 years, as we really take advantage of the technology and just the strategies that have worked across a lot of these other industries. So the good news is, I think a lot of these paths have kind of been walked down before by brands from totally different spaces. And what I would really recommend, and what I've done my personal life too, is look and see what has worked, what's resonated with me, and then try and replicate that, because you don't need to reinvent the wheel, and the tried and true strategies will generally apply across industries, is what I've seen for sure.
I'm glad you said that. I was going to, if you had it in the sense where I get asked a lot, and we talk about this a lot about, like I said, what are the best strategies? What's the best channel? And the strategies are what they are. They work and they exist. The nuance around cannabis is the product, the education, and the messaging, where, it's not whether programmatic works or social advertising works. It's how are you communicating that product value, whether it's quality, whether it's effect, whatever that differentiator is. And then if there are gaps between your target audience, whether that's top of funnel, most likely top of funnel, or not, are you able to educate them and meet them where they're at and answer their questions and be a resource so that when they see an ad, they're not, that may be their first step to clicking through to your site, but they can actually learn more, get those questions answered, because sometimes it does pique the curiosity and it gets you thinking, oh, I want to learn more and I want to see more about this, but you need sort of that educational content or those resources to make folks feel really comfortable that they are actually going to go in and make that decision, particularly for new brands, who are just getting started, or folks who don't have that established, kind of trust and credibility if they're newer to the market or really focused on top of funnel. So I think,
and you can build strategies around that too, right? And this is something that I've seen have a ton of success outside, and we're starting to do it inside of cannabis too. It's just like, here are the 5 reasons why this is the best pant you should buy. Here are the 5 reasons why this vaporizer will change your life, right? And then click on it and then understand and educate why should I buy this? Why should I engage with this product? So those strategies have been, especially like I think in the direct to consumer good space, there's been a lot of that over the last, I don't know, 5 years or so, especially as like native as a channel has really picked up. But if you want to educate people, right, like you need to have ads and messaging that actually educates them. So it's always just about like matching consumers with where they are in the customer journey, so to speak, of like, if they need to be educated, like educate them, right? As opposed to just hoping that they are going to engage with your, buy this vape. Why? Tell me why I should buy it. Help me understand, why is this better than like the 20 other vapes that are out on the market? Or that if I just walk into a store, I'm probably going to ask, a bud tender, like, hey, what should I buy here? Why is this? What do you recommend if I want this or I want that, whatever it is? And I think we can do all that in digital. And it just needs to kind of be like thought out ahead of time so that we can match the buying and the strategies with where customers are relative to your brand.
And I want to come back to, you had mentioned compliance earlier, and how there's nuance with the different states and what they allow and what you can show. Are there checks within Surfside's technology, or how do you approach that? Like, is it within the Surfside studio where, when they're coming up with an ad, it goes through a compliance process, or is that an automated thing? Like, can you just talk through ensuring how that is insured for your customers?
Yeah, I mean, we basically have like a almost like a database by state of here are the different rules and regulations. Here's what we need to do to make sure in Pennsylvania versus Massachusetts versus Florida, what can both be on ads and what needs to be kind of behind it. In Massachusetts, we know we need to have disclaimers on the ads. So, really, because we're actually building a lot of the ads for our customers, we're kind of able to like build in compliance because we, our team is trained on it, understands it, and then has the resources to know, okay, like this is what we have to do in each of these markets. So really, our goal is not to have to need any sort of like automated check and balance, because we want to submit something that is compliant from the get-go. And there's also nuances in the platforms themselves. So there are certain publishers who will work with like supply partners who say like, we can't have any flower in our ads. And so because we know that nuance, we can create an ad that's going to be able to be approved on those partners and able to run. So you don't run into like, well, why did I launch this and now I haven't spent any money and I don't see any results and nothing's happening here. So we try and almost like cut it off before it can get started by just making sure that we're building ads for the markets themselves that are compliant with the rules and regulations. So we've invested a lot of time in making sure that it's very explicit across our organization.
And you're saying, like, from the publisher side, regardless of the laws, if they're just like, we don't want flower being shown, that you're able to accommodate both.
Exactly. And I think over time, this is where we definitely want to work to move the publishers and help educate them in terms of why this is not necessarily a bad thing. But I think because everything is sort of still in its infancy here and obviously state by state, there's different rules. A lot of publishers, I think, will take a blanket approach to lower risk. And so we're able to accommodate that out of the gate and make sure that we can, buy on all of the channels and all of the publishers that even if they have very specific rules in place, we've got an ad to match that, basically.
That makes sense. Okay, Matt, well, before we wrap up, is there any lessons learned, anything you wish you knew, anything you learned the hard way, now that you're 5 months into your cannabis experience, like, oh, I thought it was going to be like this, or it's like this, like any advice you would give earlier stage cannabis marketers or entrepreneurs, given everything that you know now?
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, marketing is going to continue to play a huge role in who will succeed and who won't in the space. I really think it's just about, like, there hasn't been any massive surprises. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe that this is what I've gotten into. And I think having that experience and understanding what has worked in some of these other spaces has been, hugely beneficial for me, and something I would recommend really to all kind of young or cannabis marketers is look and see what has worked elsewhere, because it's going to work here in cannabis as well. So yeah, I mean, I think it's that, yeah, there's no, I think, specific challenges really that I've seen or faced that have surprised me. I think it's mostly just about continuing to educate consumers and brands and publishers across the space so that it can just become more of a mainstream marketing channel for brands. So yeah, I mean, nothing too crazy comes to mind there, I guess.
Nice. Okay. Well, is there any contact information you want to share for either yourself or Surfside, website, social handles, things like that, for how our audience can get a hold of you?
Yeah, so we're at surfside.io. You can definitely contact us there directly. You can send an email to hello@surfside.io. Well, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn as well, Matthew Shate. But yeah, that's definitely the best way to find us, is head to surfside.io and feel free to shoot us a note, and we'll definitely get back to you as quickly as possible.
Awesome. Matt, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insights and everything you've learned. It's really much appreciated. And I'm glad that you haven't had any wild surprises in cannabis. So
no, it's been
really
great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Party Like a Marketer. Follow us on Instagram at Party Like a Marketer and on our website, thecannabismarketingassociation.com. Check out our website for more details and membership information. We'll see you next time.